All right. Good morning, folks, and welcome to another exciting week in space. I'm just gonna move my windows around, get everything in its right place to you know, dive into it. We've got a pretty full on and intense week in space that's going down. It's already happening already early on a Monday, and we've already got a lot of action going down in the celestial realms. So, yeah, I think most of this week we're going to be, or the big transit of the week is the Mars Uranus conjunction, which uh, is happening today. Happened earlier this morning, was exact earlier this morning, and is maybe the big transit of the week. Also, maybe the big transit of the month or big transit of the quarter. So we're going to be taking some time to unpack that. We're also going to talk about the full moon in Capricorn, which is rounding out the week. That's occurring on Sunday, and that's a blue moon, meaning the second full moon in the sign of Capricorn. And so some interesting things arising with that, and some pretty intense astrology correlated with that full moon. So yeah, we've got a big kind of turbulent week. Um, so yeah, just giving folks a minute more to kind of arrive and settle in, and just want to check in and see how everybody's doing. There is some pretty intense energy that has been building over the weekend, and is kind of culminating today with the Mars Uranus conjunction, which is what we're going to kick off this show talking about. But before we get there, just to let folks know, I do this each and every Monday at 10 a.m. Pacific time, 1 p.m. Eastern time. Ooh, I got it right that time. I'm getting better at this. And I do this through the AstroStar Live app. And AstroStar Live is a great astrology app. It's a free download. And what's unique about it is that it has real live astrologers like me, even though sometimes I question whether I'm real or not. There are real astrologers there who are available to answer your questions and provide like real astrology readings. And they're also producing content, including, talks, classes, breakdowns on what's happening in the astral weather, talking about specific placements in charts, and then also available for astrology readings. So yeah, it's kind of unique in this AI age where everything is sort of computer generated, that you have people who are doing actual work. Heather for Luck asks, do you think the Uranus Mars conjunction is why everyone I know is having trouble sleeping? And I would say yes to that. That is, Uranus is like electrical energy, and Mars is the desire to act. And so I think one of the things that happens with intense Uranus transits is we get all of this like frenetic energy in our system. And then one of the ways that this shows up is Mars is like, oh, I need to do something with this. And so this can lead to impulsivity, and it can lead to sort of, acting without thinking, because there's this electrical charge in the system that is looking for a place to discharge it. Um, and yeah, if there's, at nighttime and we're not in our action, right, that energy is still in the system and can be difficult to sleep. And so, yes, I would say that is a reason that your friends might be having trouble sleeping. And one thing that I could recommend is like running, exercise, physical activity, ways of discharging the nervous energy of Uranus through martial action, right? And through maybe intentional martial action. And depending on where this transit is occurring in people's charts or where their natal Mars is, that gives us more of a clue of how that energy can be best discharged or what Mars might want to do. Um, yeah. Also, yeah, Moon in Scorpio. So that's coming up because the Moon in Scorpio is opposing the Mars Uranus conjunction, which we'll get into in a minute. But before we do, just to circle back to Astrostar for one quick moment, just like Heather for Luck was asking, right? Having actual real live astrologers who can answer your questions can be really helpful, instead of just a kind of generic AI report. So having people who are able to like help you work through what's going on, or getting a reading so you can see where Mars in your chart is, for example, and how that might be discharging, or like the best way to like release that sort of frenetic Uranian energy, can be incredibly helpful. So if you're interested in joining a astrological community, or getting down with some deeper astrological knowledge and conversation, I invite you to join us over there at Astrostar Live. And you can download that app wherever you get your apps at. I'll put a link in there's a link in my bio on Instagram, on YouTube. I'll put it in the comments, and you can click that link and just follow me. Okay. Arinko Sunshine asks, what about relationships? Oh, that is a great question. Um, Uranus is a planet that is interested in freedom and liberation and authenticity, right? And so Uranus is like, I want to be free, right? I have this ideal, and this is what I want to live up to. And Mars is like, with this conjunction, Mars is a planet of action, can be moving into action to create that freedom, create that liberation. Mars is cutting and severing. Not to say that we should cut anybody, but Mars can want to sever connections, right, to create freedom. And so in the realm of relationship, there may be feelings of, I am not free, or this person is too close, or this is too much. I've got to cut it off, right? Or I've got to take an action, or Uranus, Mars can be blow it up, right? So I've got to get out of here. I've got to run. Can be a Mars Uranus response, or a response to this sort of frenetic energy of this transit. So in a relationship experience, right? This can be, an invitation to talk about some of the, okay, that tracks. Yeah, I figured, and this can be an invitation to sort of go deeper, right? To cut deeper into that relational space, right? Because this is occurring in Taurus, which is a Venus ruled sign, which wants peace, wants stability, wants security, wants to feel good, right? And these are all things that we can get from a relationship. However, if that relational container, right, is if that sense of peace and stability is beginning to like feel restrictive to that martial energy, right? Or to that Uranian sense of authenticity and liberation, there can be I want to blow this up, right? And blowing it up doesn't mean it needs to die or end. Blowing it up just means that something's got to shift, right? Um, okay, yeah, trying not to do your usual thing of blowing things up. Okay, Venus and Aries, right? So, and okay, this person is a Taurus. Yeah, so I'm also curious where this conjunction is happening next to their Taurus placements, right? But the if we think about like the Taurian garden of relationship, right? And the sort of bull or the cow hanging out in this Taurian garden, who's like, oh, this is really nice. This is very peaceful, right? I'm loving it here. And then they're like munching on the grass and living their life. And then all of a sudden they're like, ooh, this is like I'm running out of grass now. Like I'm not feeling so free. I can see the corral. I can't really do what I want. I see some, wild horses or wild cows out there, and I'm getting kind of jealous, right? And there can be the desire to sort of, want to like break through the corral and run free. And that, maybe that's what that situation needs, but another way of thinking about it is like, how do we have conversations that like allow us to adjust, right, the parameters, adjust the container, adjust the corral, right, so that we are able to have the Venusian Taurian sense of security and stability and joy and pleasure, right? Because these things are really important, and these are things that I think we're striving for in the end. And sometimes we need to take action or have conversation. And conversation is an action, right? Or, readjust things to be able to feel a little bit more free or in tune with our authentic sense of self, right? And what we really desire. And, you know, Taurus is a fixed earth sign and is like, I don't want, I can see the corral, bro. Yeah. Right. And so like what is the ideal corral here, right? What is the ideal container of, one's life or one's relationship or one's situationship or, how one is living so that we can experience pleasure and joy, right? And so I think what this transit is asking, right? Or let me back up a second. Taurus is a fixed earth sign and it's like, no, I don't want to change, right? I found something, it works, I'm doing this, this is what we're doing, right? And then all of a sudden, after like doing it and doing it and doing it, wow, the Uranian parts can come in and be like, I'm so bored, right? Or I'm so frustrated, or I need a change right now. And Mars is like, I'm on it, let's go, right? Mars like breaks out the chainsaw and it's like, like cutting through the corral, or that bull just sees the like red and is like, I'm charging in that direction, I'm out of here, right? And so again, there can be this like desire to blow it all up. And what we're actually trying to do is create adjustments and shifts and changes to allow ourselves to feel a deeper sense of security, to come into a more authentic sense of pleasure, to create more nervous system regulation, which can be, oh, what's up, Gina Maria? Nice to see you. Um, uh so there yeah, so we're trying to kind of do this Taurus place a little bit better, and Uranus is a planet of breakdown and breakthrough, and we kind of need that breakdown to get to the breakthrough, right? Something has to change is what this Uranus is saying, and Mars is a activator. Mars is a trigger, right? We can think of Uranus as the dynamite and Mars as like lighting the fuse, right? So something needs to like shift or change, and how that looks depends on how we show up for it. And again, one of the things that I love about astrology is it allows us to show up to these things in a conscious way. It allows us to approach these archetypal energies in a conscious way. And so when we feel that like I've got to get out of here, right, we can step back for a moment and be like, okay, that's a Uranian part, right? That is this energy that is coming online, and this martial part that is coming online that wants to create action for change, right? So what is a skillful way that I can do this instead of having all of this nervous energy and acting impulsively, right? Just blowing things up and sabotaging things, which I'm really good at sabotaging stuff, right? And so to think about how I can direct this energy in a conscious way to create change, that I can be more authentic, that I can feel a little bit more free and have a deeper sense of pleasure and safety and security at the end of it without just having to like blow everything up and then sort out all the pieces later on. Dig? Um, and Orinco Sunshine is like saboteur is just such a cool word. Yes, it is, but it's a hard way to live, especially if that saboteur is like directed at you, right? It's just blowing up the things that you are building. And straight up for those people in the millennial generation who have that Neptune, Uranus, and Saturn conjunction, right? Especially with that Saturn Uranus, Saturn is building structures and Uranus is blowing them up. Right. So there can be this desire of like, oh, I'm building towards this vision. And then the saboteur is like, I'm bored, fuck it. Blam. Right. Do it again. Like, we'll do it differently. I don't want to do this anymore. I'm fed up, you know. And so that can be a really hard way to live if we are constantly undercutting ourselves. And, again, coming back to coming into relationship with these archetypes, how do we direct that energy towards our goals, right? And towards the I don't know. I want to say greater good, but like maybe that's a little cheesy, right? But how do we direct that like saboteur energy? And what is another way to think about this is what is that saboteur looking for, right? What is that saboteur asking for? What is the energy that that saboteur needs, right? Because to undercut ourselves is not helping. Right. And so what is the maybe, desire of the saboteur underneath like I just need chaos or like I want to like undercut me. Maybe it's looking for something new that doesn't exist yet, right? And maybe we can shift that sabotage energy into an energy of creation, right? Of creating new ways of being and new pathways, new ways of relating, right? Um, uh, Oh, nice. Yeah, Heather for Luck says the Uranus, Neptune, Saturn stellium is in the first house, and that Uranus and Taurus has been helping me liberate myself from stories that were holding me back. And that's what's up, right? Being able to understand that this energy desires liberation. And so what do we want to liberate ourselves from? And also, what does liberation look like? Not just like what am I running from, but what do I want to create? And I think that uh, yeah, or maybe we are running towards a life of sexy international intrigue, right? And so, yeah, to think about not just like what am I trying to blow up, what am I trying to run away from, but what am I running towards? What am I trying to create? What is the ideal here? And maybe that is sexy international intrigue, and I totally support that. But what we don't want to do is just like keep ourselves small, living in rubble if we can help it. So we kind of like dipped into this already. We just launched in, which I think is a very like Mars and Uranus vibe. Um, uh, sorry, I'm just checking the comments. And Gina Maria says my saboteur is helping and active. That's what's up. And I hope you had a good time at the Disability Pride Parade, Gina Maria. I'm sorry that I couldn't be there, but I hope some of my homies came to help out. Okay, so um, yeah, let's talk about the kind of archetypes at play here, right? So Uranus, um, Uranus is associated with two different titans or two different gods. Oranos, who is not a titan, who is a primordial sky god, right? And also Prometheus, who is a titan. And so on one hand, we have Oranos, right, who is at the beginning of everything, according to the Greek cosmology. Oranos was wrapped around Gaia. The sky and the earth were together, right? And nothing could grow and nothing could live. There was no time, right? There was no space. It was just earth and sky sort of compacted into one thing. And so nothing could exist. And they were having all these children that Oranos was like, nah, these aren't good enough. Nah, like this doesn't live up to my ideal, and would shove them back into the earth. And Gaia was not having that. That was very uncomfortable and difficult. And Gaia was like, absolutely not. No, we are done with this. And so a iron sickle was formed, and Gaia was like, "Which one of my children wants to step up and protect me?" And Kronos was like, "Yo, I'll do it." The youngest was like, "I will do it," and goes up and castrates Oranos and throws his junk into the ocean. and it bubbles and foams, and Aphrodite is born from the castration foam. And Oranos is like, oh, hell no, and sort of flies away into space. And so we have this kind of primordial sky god, right, who is known for separating, separating from the earth, having his junk separated from him, right, and who kind of occupies this detached space in the realm of ideas, in the sky realm, and also in the planetary relationship, right? We have Kronos Saturn, who is the end, the limit of what we can see with the naked eye. And then beyond that, we have Uranus or Uranus, right? Which is in the beyond the realm of the physical, beyond physical reality into the realm of possibility. Um, and so we have these kind of themes of separating, right? And separating and severing is a martial quality. Mars is one of Mars's things is cutting, right? So we have this kind of like castration, this cutting, this separating that kind of tracks with the martial qualities as well. And what's sort of interesting is out of this initial revolution and act of violence, right, we have the creation of Aphrodite. Venus, which is the attractive quality, the qualities of beauty and relationship. It is the gravitational force, the gravitational attraction that brings things together. So we have like at the beginning there was nothing, there was no space, right? And then we have this separating, and then out of that Aphrodite is born, which is the attractive quality of gravity that holds everything together. So in some ways we can see that or we can consider love as something that holds everything in its balance, right? We also have Oranos separating into the realm of idea where they're looking down on everything, right? So Oranos, Uranus can be abstract, it can be disassociated, right? And so Mars is about conflict, right? Mars is about showing up and taking action, right? And so as this happens, Uranus can either, be involved in it, right, and be involved in the martial action, or it can be like, whoa, conflict is tricky and complicated, I'm out. Right? And I'm gonna like stay in the abstract realm, while this conflict happens, right, while action is taken. And so one of the things that we want to think about is how we bring these energies together, the martial energy of action, right, and thinking about what might need to be cut or severed, right, so that change can happen and we can come into a better balance, right? From something that is like really constrictive or overwhelming or feels oppressive, right? To create a sense of separation, but a separation that is not just like, whoa, I'm out, right? Or like, I'm just going to watch from up here, but a separation that is sort of balanced with a heart and with love and with compassion, and that maintains an attractive quality so that we stay in the game, right? Another thing that might happen is again, Oranos or Uranus, right? The realm of ideas, as they come into the physical realm, they may be castrated, right? Cut down, which can lead to some feelings, right? So we may feel some conflict as our ideas are coming into action and being like, oh, this isn't good enough, or I can't do this, or I'm meeting resistance, right? And again, that can lead to like, fuck it, I'm going to blow it up, right? I'm going to blow it up and walk away. I'm going to blow it up and disassociate, So thinking about how we stay with it, right? And what the goal is, I think is always really helpful. Like, what are we actually trying to do? And what are we trying to achieve? Oh, I'm so sorry, wounded healer. Yeah. And I think that, there is this is putting strain on relationship, right? This is putting strain on connection because again, Mars is severing and cutting connection, and Uranus is like, Uranus is difficult because it's like, I want freedom, right? And it wants an idealized vision of freedom that is not necessarily connected to the trans-Saturnian realm that has like real physical implications here. Uranus is the kind of perfect geometrical, right? The idealized sort of form of freedom and liberation. And so, being like, I want that form that can exist here, or I don't have it here. And so I'm very frustrated. And so I'm going to cut something off to try and move towards this ideal. And like, as that ideal comes into the physical realm, it gets, whittled down, it gets castrated, it gets cut, right? And it can be very difficult and challenging to be like, this isn't what I wanted, right? And so I think this is, the challenge of living in 3D reality in the trans-Saturnian realm is, being like, I have this vision and this is my reality. And how do we hold both of these instead of being like, this isn't as good as I want it to be, so this is bad and I'm going to blow it up and destroy it, right? Or run away or cut it off. And I think this is the kind of like delicate energy that we are playing with here. And unfortunately, neither Uranus nor Mars are very delicate, right? Uranus is like, I want the thing now. And Mars is like, go do it, right? So, I have a lot of compassion for everyone who is going through this in their own ways. The other, god or titan that is associated with Oranos, or sorry, with Uranus, is Prometheus, right? Who is the god of foresight, which I think is kind of interesting. And he also created human beings out of clay. We are his creations, right? And he loves us. And Zeus was like, you know what? I don't like this. No fire for them. And in one of the stories, Zeus was like, okay, you made them out of clay, right, which is earth. You sort of used the water of life to bring them into life, or to like mold the clay. You breathed life into them, so they have earth, water, air, and they're only lacking fire. And if they have fire, then they will have all of the elements, and they might overthrow us. And Zeus is the product of intergenerational trauma. Or Ouranos is his grandfather, right? Castrated by Saturn, right? And Ouranos is like, this will happen to you, my son. And then Saturn, right, is terrified of being deposed by his children. So he eats all of them except for Zeus, right, who gets away and then comes to overthrow Saturn, fulfilling the prophecy. And Zeus is constantly on edge and terrified that one of his creations or something else will overthrow and depose him, right? So there's this intergenerational trauma that is running through the Greek pantheon. And as Prometheus gives life to human beings, Zeus is like, right? I see them getting too powerful. That's why we have to give them laundry and dishes and jobs so they don't overthrow us, right? And so Uranus, Prometheus steals fire from heaven and brings it down to earth and incurs the wrath of Zeus, where he is chained to a rock and has his liver picked out by an eagle every day, and then finally is released by Chiron, right? And so, there, like with Prometheus, there is a willingness to rebel and overturn existing orders for what, we think is right, and it is this idealism encoded in the Uranian archetype, right, and the Promethean archetype. One, the bringing of fire, the bringing of light, the bringing of illumination into the system. And two, it is this like, the dedication to the ideal and what we believe is right, no matter what the consequences are, right? And the refusal to compromise. And Mars, right, the planet of action in the trans-Saturnian realm, gives us the ability to act on those ideals, whatever the consequences. And, we saw that over the weekend with the attempted assassination of Trump, right? Which is like all of these archetypes really like jammed together in a pretty intense way. And this conjunction, the Mars-Uranus conjunction, was happening on Trump's midheaven, squaring his natal Mars, right? And we have, idealism, right? We have head wounds, we have blood, we have cutting, right? We have a kind of like sudden revolutionary act. A lot of like intense stuff. was happening. And also, like, Uranus is unpredictable, right? So who knows how this is going to play out? And I think that I think that there's a tendency to be like, oh, that event is over, right? Not just with the shooting of Trump, but also with the conjunction. And conjunctions are not the end of the story. In fact, that they are the beginning of the story. It is a seed that is being planted, right? And a seed that unfolds over time. And with any astrological transit, there is the moment it perfects where it like hits, right? And it's like there. But like that energy builds for a while in intensity and then it hits and then it dissipates, right? So like that energy begins to unfold from that like building and culminating place, then it begins to like integrate into larger systems. And so Uranus is unpredictable, and I'm curious to see how things unfold. I also think that it is easy to project all of this energy onto events on the world stage. And, I like the mundane astrology, meaning the astrology of the world, right? The astrology of that's happening and how it's reflected in world events, because we can see, oh, this is how that's playing out. Isn't that interesting, right? This is how that energy is sort of taking shape. Or, if we think about astrology as a mycelial network, right? And the event as the mushroom where it's like sort of popping through, right? Oh, that's interesting. I'll come back to that. Right. Uh, the world event is like the mushroom who is popping through the surface. It's like, oh, that's what that is. That's what that looks like. However, I want to caution folks not to be like, oh, that's that, right? This energy, this Uranus Mars energy that is impacting me, that is hard to hold and is dysregulating in my nervous system, that is the attempted assassination of former President Trump, right? So like I don't need to deal with that in myself because it's playing out so big and glaringly on the world stage. And I think that type of projection does us a disservice. I think it's important that we own that energy for ourselves. And like while we can see it reflected in one form out there, that is also like a specific person's chart who happens to be on a global stage, right? But like how do we hold it in ourselves, and what is happening, what areas of like upheaval are we facing, and how is that kind of electrical surge of the Iranian energy moving through our systems, and what might need to happen to discharge that in a healthy and skillful way. Um, and so, and so, hold on. And so another kind of aspect of this, just to yeah, and Leslie saying, talking about how Carl Jung was, saying in the age of Aquarius, we need to be taking back our projections. And I think that this is at the core of kind of Jungian theory is, the ways that we can recognize our own shadow and call back our projections and be able to hold them for ourselves and work through them for ourselves. And I think, we live in a hall of mirrors, right? So it can be really helpful to see how our things are reflected back at us, right? But how do we kind of hold this in ourselves, right, without outsourcing it to other people? And Wounded Healer Personal Care is saying the Mars-Uranus conjunction. So we get Mars-Uranus conjunctions every 2 years about. Last one was 2022. The one before that was January 20th of 21. And so that was leading up to that, we had January 6th. I don't know if you all remember that. I don't know if you remember where you were on January 6th. But yeah, the one leading the not last one, but the one previous to that was on January 20th, and so we had January 6th, kind of leading up to that like Uranian martial energy, kind of like building and building and building. The last time it was in Taurus, I can look that up, but has been a minute, and Uranus has an 84-year cycle, so it would make sense that it was around 84 years ago. But yeah, leading up to not the previous one, but the one before that was, January 6th, which there's some other signifiers in there about what was going on. And then on January 20th, which was Inauguration Day, the day that Biden was inaugurated, which is like kind of a wild signature to have in your inauguration chart. All the astrologers, or astrologers were like, oh, what's going to happen? Right. And like all we got out of that was the meme with Bernie Sanders and his mittens. Right. And so like Uranus is very kind of unpredictable. Right. It is like all this buildup. And then at the actual moment, it was, just a meme of Bernie Sanders, which is still, pretty relevant. And also there was the power grid failure in Texas because the power grid got overwhelmed. So there's also, and this was Uranus in Taurus, right? So there's also this piece around structures, right? Taurian structures and safety that are failing, right? Or there can be failures around these systems of stability and safety, which, if we look back at the Trump shooting, one of the conversations that's happening is the failure of the Secret Service, right, to create a system to keep Trump safe. And so, just an interesting kind of reflection again in the media, but how do we like pull that back and be like, okay, what sort of systems might need to be rethought or readjusted? What kind of like sense of safety or stability, might feel too much or too oppressive or too constrictive, or might be failing, right, and need to be revolutionized. And I think that is a key word with Uranus, is revolutionized, right? And yeah, failure of security, Leslie is bringing in, is also relevant to January 6th, right? Because there were like no cops there, right? And they were like, oh yeah, sir, like just come on in, right? Oh, you need you need a copy of the Constitution? Like, come on in. Um, um, I can I in Wounded Healer personal care, I'm not exactly sure when the last time Mars and Uranus were conjunct in Taurus. I can look that up, but I'm not going to do it during this talk. But it would make sense that it would be around 84 years ago, because again, Uranus has an 84-year cycle around the zodiac. So the last time Uranus was in Taurus, yeah, it makes sense that was 84 years ago. And then probably, spending what is it, like 8 years in a sign, there's probably 2 or 3 Mars conjunctions that happened during that time. And you're right, it'd be interesting to look back and see what was going on, and what sort of world events, right? Because this also creates echoes. And so again, thinking about, the places that safety and security and stability might need to be updated in the self, right? Or revolutionized. And so if this was not enough, right? And also like happy Monday. And okay, let me just see here. No, I'm not going to do that. So yeah, like this is kind of a lot already for a Monday. Um, and on top of all of this, if this were not enough, right? Um, if this were not enough, we have this conjunction happening right on top of Algol, which is a fixed star, right? Um, and so Algol is a fixed star which resides at 26 degrees of Taurus in the Perseus constellation. And this Mars-Uranus conjunction is happening at 26 degrees. And so and oh yeah, Gina Maria saying in terms of like revolutionizing these systems, right? That they work for FEMA, and that does need an overhaul. And I've never worked for FEMA, but I believe you. And so, yeah, there's also a conversation going on about when the last time Mars was in Taurus, and you can look on astroseek.com. Like I don't want to like stop to like look that up. But yeah, I'm pretty interested in what was going on last time that we had a Mars Uranus conjunction in Taurus. So yeah, we have Algol, this fixed star, right, who has a pretty malefic vibe. Um, uh, yeah, and yeah, Algol is thought to be malefic because it blinks on and off, right? And has like sort of a spooky kind of vibe to it, like sort of blinking and kind of changing in color and intensity. And way back to the Babylonians, they were like, not good. Right. And pretty much everybody has been like, that one's spooky. And so this lives at 26 degrees of Taurus. And that's pretty close to Trump's midheaven, which I believe is at 24 Taurus. And so the fixed stars, right, stay in the sky. They don't move. The planets were known as wandering stars because they are orbiting the sun, right? And the fixed stars are the backdrop to our solar system. And the planets, orbit and then they go retrograde and they go backward. And people were like, that's weird. We got to track these ones, right? But the fixed stars tend to be just the background. They're not sort of moving in the same way. And so Algol is sort of posted at 26 degrees of Taurus. There's the progression of the equinox, so they move slowly, whatever. We're not going to get into that, but Algol has been seen as a malefic influence for a long time, and it is associated with loss of power, also loss of autonomy, and it's what else? Also associated with beheading, and in the Babylonian tradition, it was associated with an old man who sort of used a wand and a head to scare off evil spirits. So there's also a protective element that Algol has, and I'll get to this in a second, but is in the Greek cosmology is related to Medusa. Right, because it's in the constellation of Perseus and it's in the Medusa head area of that constellation. And so the mythology of Medusa is complex and has a lot going on. And there's sort of two diverging tales. One is that Medusa was sexually assaulted by Poseidon. Medusa was a priestess of Athena and was sexually assaulted by Poseidon in Athena's temple. And Athena got very upset and victim blamed Medusa and transformed her into a gorgon with snakes for hair and like sort of outcast her. And Medusa turns everything that she sees into stone. So this very like outcasting and like energy of, blaming Medusa for the violence that was done upon her. Right, and creating a situation where she can't have a connection because everything turns to stone. Um, a way of thinking about this and is Medusa as a trauma archetype, right? And in trauma response, one of the trauma responses is the freeze, right? Turning to stone, right? Becoming paralyzed. And so Medusa is this archetype of this sort of traumatic, right, freeze response or a revisiting of trauma that paralyzes us. And Perseus, who finally slays or releases Medusa, and you can think about it in two ways. The way that he is able to do that is not by approaching it directly, but by looking at her through a mirror. Right. So there is a reflective process of not like approaching the trauma directly, but having to like see it reflected off of something else. Right. And seeing it through a mediator, right? Mediating that sort of experience instead of having to go like straight at it, which is something that is kind of interesting to think about as we're thinking about the like Mars Uranus energy, right? And this like really kind of frenetic energy, and Mars as like action, and Mars Uranus as being impulsive and even accident prone, right? And so, as we are like compelled to act, to like think about, what is motivating this, right? And also, how do we like mediate this? How do we like look at this through reflection? Another kind of piece of the story is Perseus cuts off Medusa's head and like takes it takes it to fulfill his kind of quest. And as Medusa is decapitated, the Pegasus is born out of her body, right? So there is this sort of shift from a monster, right, or something that is heavy and weighty, to something with wings that is magical, that has lightness. So this story also speaks of the ways that trauma can be transformed into something else, right? And I think Perseus going on with this severed head of Medusa, and I know that this is kind of grim and gnarly, but I think it's important, is that sort of experience of going through this trauma and having this freeze response, right, that is kept safely in a container, also comes in handy in all of these other situations, right? He uses it to turn the Kraken into stone and save Andromeda, and to regain his kingdom, and then finally brings this head to Athena, who integrates it into her breastplate, and finally, like the goddess of victory, integrates this kind of trauma signature into a more holistic system. Right. And so these are just, things that the archetype of Medusa brings up for me. And to think about, again, how this Uranian energy of liberation and freedom, and this martial energy of action and cutting and severing, right, how that relates to the Medusa archetype, right? Because we don't want to like just cut off the head of trauma and get rid of it, right? Because I don't think that works. We need to go through that whole process of releasing the Pegasus, right? Um, and integrating that experience, that freeze response, and also the ways in which, like, I have gone through this like difficult situation in the past, right? How holding that allows us to move through difficulty in the present, and collectively, right? For example, um uh we have all been through the January 6th chaos, right? Which is, another like Mars Uranus signature. And we find ourselves at this, like, in my opinion, like dysregulating time, right? In a time of uncertainty and instability and fear. And also noticing like, okay, I have been through one experience, and now I can bring that to bear on my current experience, and having faith and trust that I can move through this. Right. Um, and so, yeah, and the sort of last thing that I want to say on algol, and Leslie saying that algol is the root for alcohol, which I think is really interesting. Um, uh, and so, yeah, this is from this oracle deck on the Bohemian Fixed Stars. Um, by Ryan Butler and Terry Johnson, who are both great. And they say there is a dark side to Algol befitting her malevolent nature. She can corrupt those she serves by allowing them to get away with things more easily, or providing them with an invincibility from accountability they may seek to abuse their newfound strength. This is not Algol corrupting an individual, but is more of the product of human nature, and can show us who we are when we think no one can see or stop us. And I just wanted to bring that in because in astral magic, Algol, not Al Gore, Algol, is can be used as a protective talisman. And with Trump getting shot in the ear like mere inches from his head, which is, the severing of heads is related to this fixed star. And, there is a sort of slipping the noose in some ways. And the same thing, again, today, when this conjunction perfects, his stolen documents case was dismissed or thrown out by his judge, Eileen Cannon in Florida, right? And so again, like escaping accountability. And I think that is the protective nature of Algol, right? Protecting those who serve this malefic star energy. So I don't know. I thought that was also interesting. And I don't, it is what it is. And I think that also, and in summation, right, for this portion, again, we're seeing these events play out on the world stage, and as events unfold on such a massive scale, it can feel like, oh, I am powerless, right? What do I do? How do I show up? How do I have an impact in the face of like such a massive wave? And it can be like it can create disassociation, which is a feeling that I've been experiencing, and it can create feelings of hopelessness or powerlessness. And what I would urge people to consider is what are the actions that I can take, right, that help to create freedom, not just for myself, but for all sentient beings, right? What are the small steps that I can take that supports the liberation of sentient beings and the helps to create freedom and helps to move us towards the ideal that I hold, beyond the realm of the 3D, beyond the realm of the known and what I see manifesting here, right? Um, and so as we are, interfacing with the Saturnian world to also hold that Uranian revolutionary ideal in the self, and not necessarily like needing to act impulsively on it, but to consider what are the steps that I can take to begin to bring like the fire into the world, right? In a healthy, supporting way, not to burn everything down necessarily, but to provide light, to cook food, right? To give warmth, to create community. And what are the actions that I can take that can bring this sort of revolutionary, radical, liberatory energy to life, not just for myself, but for all sentient beings. Uh, uh, all right. So we've got, and thank you everybody for your comments. And we've got like 8 minutes left, and I sort of spent longer on that than I anticipated. So we're just going to jump ahead through all the astrology of the week and go right to Sunday's full moon in Capricorn. I apologize for that, but hey, there's a lot to say on this relationship, and a lot that was unfolding. So, the last thing that I want to say about this Mars Uranus conjunction, just when you thought you were pull you back in. The last thing that I want to say is Mars is a trigger. So Mars activates points in the zodiac that have been charged by eclipses, by conjunctions, by previous aspects, right? And so when there is an aspect in the zodiac, there's sort of a kind of a digging into that point, or that planet carries that charge. And so we had the Jupiter Uranus conjunction on 420. Um, and during that time, there was student protests on college campuses protesting the war in Palestine, and calling for divestment from corporations who were funding the atrocities there, and from universities that were funding that war through their investments. And so then we have Jupiter and Uranus separating, and then Mars comes along and is going to conjunct them. Mars conjuncts Uranus today, which also, oddly enough, is the first day of the Republican National Convention. And then Mars will move along and conjunct Jupiter on, I believe, August the 15th, which is right around the start of the Democratic National Convention. And so we have Mars activating the energy that was seeded with the Jupiter and Uranus conjunction, right? Which is maybe an expansion of revolution, right? Which we saw kind of spilling out with the college protests, which those have subsided because we're on summer break. But, that energy is seeded, and I'm curious to see how Mars continues to activate that through its contact with Uranus and then Jupiter, and that space in between, right? Because I think that there's a lot building and bubbling, and this is being released, and I think it's being released in multiple ways. So just pay attention to that. So last thing that I want to say is on Sunday, July the 21st, we are getting a full moon in Capricorn at 29 degrees and 9 arc minutes of the sign of the goat. Right, so we have the sun in Cancer and the moon in Capricorn, and they're both at the 29th degree. Um, and the 29th degree is spooky anaretic degree. It is the culmination of like what has been happening in the sign, all of the lessons, and also the anticipation and moving into the next thing, which can feel very fraught, right? When you're like starting something new, it's like, what is it going to be like? I don't want to go there. I don't even know, right? And so there can be a lot of like nervous energy around that. This is a blue moon, so the second full moon in Capricorn that we are receiving. The first one was back on June the 21st. And so this can be maybe a culmination of things that have been developing since June. And a full moon tends to be the like high point, right? Like when things are full all the way to the top, and it is sort of a full moon, right? Overflowing. And it is a point of being like, okay, this is too much, right? What needs to be released? What needs to be let go? It is reflecting all of that energy so that we can make conscious choices about like, okay, that feels pretty fraught emotionally. And so we can begin to release some things. So I think that there is a culminating point from what was, what we saw in June and then through the new moon in Cancer, right, which is coming to this kind of conclusion. And so this is a time that we can think about what we are holding and what we are holding emotionally. And, the Cancer Capricorn axis, I see a lot about safety, right? In Cancer, we have emotional safety. In Capricorn, we have physical safety. Putting them together, we have a physical safety that creates emotional vulnerability, which is ideal, right? And we're looking at this axis of like, do I feel safe? How can I feel safe? What are the systems that I can implement to create safety, emotional safety for myself, and a deeper sense of connection with other people so that I can be in a place where I feel okay to be vulnerable, so I can be honest about what's going on. Now, that sounds great, except for this full moon is going to be conjunct Pluto. Right. And so that means that the sun is opposing Pluto, and the next day the sun will be exactly opposite Pluto. And so this can bring up emotional tension and turmoil, right? Power struggles, feelings of pressure that magnify our emotions, things that are coming up from the unconscious, right? And I think that this can be helpful because it is dredging up, things from the unconscious and maybe ways that we don't feel safe. Right. And this can be old stories, like somebody was saying, right? Observing old stories that can then come to the surface and be reflected so that we can release them and create space for something new to occur, right? It's for a new seed to be planted, right? A new story to be told. And I think Pluto is related to kind of survival drives and unconscious desires, right? And we might see that reflected, or we might feel a lack of safety, right? That can create scared and overwhelmed feelings as these sort of drives and desires come up in the emotional body, right? And so there can be like, this can lead to feelings of catastrophizing or spiraling out, and feelings of overwhelm. And so to think about, how we can hold this energy, right, in safe ways, and how we can also begin to release it as it like comes up and moves through us. And also, Pluto is related to kind of our shadow parts. And so how do we see those reflected in the full moon, right? And how do we reflect these things and have a container to help to hold them and contain them so that we can safely process them and work through them, right? And this might be fears about the world, fears about our emotional security, fears about our physical safety, and what are these sort of structures that we can create to like help hold a container for this. Also, Jupiter and Venus are going to be sextile on this day, which is nice, right? It is a little bit of ease that we get from the two benefics coming into a supportive contact with each other. And so this can be community, right? This can be friend groups. This can be our social circle that we are able to process this intense kind of scared energy with, and to feel safety and connection with, and to find the, that group of people that we are able to be in connection with to increase that sense of safety and sense of belonging. The other thing that's happening is the moon will be sextile to Neptune and trining, and the sun will be trining Neptune. And and this is at the 29th degree, Neptune at 29 of Pisces, and the moon at 29 of Capricorn, sun 29 of Cancer. And so, there can be Neptune can want to check out, right? Oh, it's too much. I'm out of here, right? Or try and spiritual bypass, like it's all good, right? Everything's in its right place, everything is good, don't need to do anything. And whatever gets you through the day, right? But how do we not spiritually bypass or like lean into escapism? And how do we cultivate a space where we can be present with what's arising and also create a vision for the future, right? Neptune's sort of superpower is imagination and creativity and spirituality. And how do we lean into creative visualization, imagination, creative process, and creative practice as a way of sort of channeling some of this energy? And instead of like, as Pluto is coming up and brings up all this fear and like has us spiraling, right? How do we like lean into Neptune and have a better vision for the future, right? And trust in a power greater than ourselves that can help to guide us through this journey and lean into community and friends and connection, right, to help stabilize us and stay present through this. And you don't have to be present through the whole thing, right? It's like really grueling to be present, but how do we not just like spiral out and then check out and try and party and sort of escape, right? And how do we like keep one foot in the escapist realm and one foot in reality, right? And how do we like kind of bridge these things together? And I think that is what the full moon is illuminating, right? Our ability to create systems of safety so that we can be present, authentic, and vulnerable, right? Without having to escape or spiral out, right? And how we can be present with difficult emotions and have the support system from our relationships and the web of connection that we exist in. And this is human and also, animal, also natural, right? And how do we like sort of lean into that and recognize that we're not alone, right? And that we don't have to just like get overwhelmed and check out, that we were able to be with each other through all this. And to Spiral Tarot, happy birthday to your friend. Or sorry, happy wedding to your friend who's getting married on Sunday under this full moon. And I like, the Venus Jupiter relationship is great for a party, and Pluto like brings up some deep things, right? So I don't know, this could be like a very transformational wedding. Oh, what is up, Jeff? Nice to see you. And I am wrapping this up. And I wish everybody a great week and, resource yourself the way that you can. I also want to give a shout out to Cosmic Cousins, Jeff Hinshaw, who's a great astrologer, who made a fantastic theme song for me after my talk last week. And it just like brings tears to my eyes how good it is. And some of you all know, and for those of you who don't, I do a weekly astrology themed radio show, which is much like this, but instead of me talking the entire time, I play music that I think is related to the archetypes and the astrological themes of the week. And I kick off this week's show with the track that Jeff wrote for me, which is brilliant. And as soon as this is done, I'm going to put a link to that in my stories. You can find my show on SoundCloud at Camp Wizard Camp. That's my SoundCloud handle. I will put a link in the YouTube on Astrostar. Check it out. I will see if I can post a link on the dashboard there. But it kicks off with this theme song that Jeff wrote for me, which is brilliant. And I just want to share it with all of you because I think it's so good. And I am like so grateful for your contribution. And someday, maybe I can have a real live show where I kick it off with that theme song. So thank you. I'm getting all red. Anywho, oh, and Elizabeth is officiating a wedding on Saturday night. Okay, like I guess this is a great time for a wedding. Jupiter sextile Venus is a great signature for a wedding, and a full moon is a great time to have a wedding. And I think that the sun in Cancer is also really good for vulnerability and connection. Um, you know, there's like, and these are intense times, right? And I think this is another thing with astrology is like you got to go with it. You got to roll with it and show up for it, right? And to trust our intuition that the choices that we make are the right ones for us, right? And we can't. Astrology is not there to live in fear of. Astrology, in my opinion, is there to be like, okay, this is what I'm working with, right? These are the ingredients that I have for the week. What am I going to make out of this? Right? Are we having mush? Are we having gruel? Are we having, steak? Are we having salmon? Right? So, I think that just being able to show up for what is asked of us and show up in a skillful way and support our nervous systems, especially at this time. Watch out for risky behaviors. Okay, this is my PSA to close this out. Watch out for risky behaviors. I would not go skydiving this week because Mars Uranus is a accident signature. So beware of skydiving or accident prone activities. If you can save that for a week from now, that's probably a better idea. But again, you got to show up for what is being asked of you, and yeah, watch out for impulsivity and risk-taking behaviors and things that have a high rate of accidents. And other than that, may the force be with you. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Um, I think that you get to determine what's risky for you, right? Um, you know, and what level of risk you are willing to entertain. Um, yeah. Yeah. Happy accidents to everybody. Thank you. Thank you, Leslie. And thanks everybody for tuning in. Again, you can find me on the AstroStar Live app. I do this report each and every Monday at 10 a.m. Pacific time, 1 p.m. Eastern time. And I am an advisor on the excellent AstroStar Live astrology app. You can check me out over there. There are a bunch of great astrologers, including Cameron Allen, Bear Hickman, Sam Reynolds, who are all providing readings, producing content, giving talks, doing meditations, doing a bunch of stuff over there. So if you're interested in deepening your astrological knowledge or joining a great astrological community, check us out on AstroStar Live. And if you're interested in a reading, you can find me over there and book with me through AstroStar Live. And yeah, that's all the Astro weather that is fit to print, my friends. Thank you so much for tuning in. And don't forget to check out my excellent astrology-themed radio show, The Melee Report. Again, I'll put a link to that in my stories on Instagram and a link in the show notes on YouTube and something on Astrostar. But yeah, that is a great way to get your Astro weather. It provides an excellent soundtrack to keep you rocking through the trials, tribulations, and vicissitudes of the Astro weather for the week. So check it out, and it's great to see everybody. I'll see you all next Monday, and have a very pleasant week full of happy accidents, as Leslie says. And yeah, as always, may the force be with you, and I'll see you next time. Bye now.